Hello and welcome to another TV Central podcast. I'm Aaron Ryan. This is podcast number 49 and it's great to have your company whenever you may be listening to this. As of late, we have had some specific program podcasts, so I thought it would be nice to have a general television chat. And making her TV Central podcast debut is Jessica Leo, entertainment editor for The Advertiser in Adelaide. Jess, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Excellent. Well, look, there's plenty to talk about from the commercial offerings, but actually one of the biggest and most anticipated Australian dramas comes from the ABC with The Slap. Now we're 3 episodes in. How are you enjoying it?
I'm absolutely loving it. My only sort of sadness surrounding that is that it's only an 8 episode run. So I'm a couple more episodes in on the preview discs, and I can tell listeners to the podcast that it's definitely worth sticking with, whether you have read the book or not. But it's a real true adaptation to the book and just Australian drama like we haven't seen it for some time, I think.
Well, obvious question. The tagline for the show is whose side are you on?
Mm, it is interesting. I'm actually reading the book as I'm watching the series, so it's there is a bit more background in the book, and I'm not a mother myself, but I do believe people should discipline their own children how they see fit, and obviously for those people who have seen the first episode, the slap is a man slapping someone else's child, and that's the real contentious issue for me is that you can't inflict that sort of thing on someone else's child, but it's obviously a really compelling story because you can see both sides of the argument and the way it's being put across.
Well, also, what do you think about the slot it was given on Thursday nights? Now, originally it was going to get the Sunday slot, but they backed away from that because of Underbelly. Was Thursday night right, or did they miss a big opportunity on Sunday nights?
Look, I reckon they missed a bit of an opportunity. Underbelly has been doing quite well, and I'll tell you what, actually, personally, before the slap came along, Underbelly was the one series I sort of tend to zone in on one that I really lap up for work and personal purposes, and that was Underbelly, and that's been well and truly replaced for me by the slap. I mean, I guess it would have been hard to draw people in on debut, but I think if perhaps even ABC had the luxury of doing both time slots, actually running it on the Sunday and maybe running a sort of encore, perhaps not so prime time on a Thursday, they would have done well and really lured audience away from Underbelly because, yeah, I am scared that it is slipping through the cracks a bit for some people. I mean, it's been getting respectable audiences for the ABC, but it definitely deserves a bit more.
Well, another Australian drama that's not quite enjoying the critical or audience acclaim, but I guess it's holding its own, is Wild Boys on Seven. What's your take on the series?
Look, for me, it's one of those ones where they've done something different, and they've taken a bit of a risk. So far, it's paying off modestly. It's not a huge hit. It's not hitting out of the ballpark like Rafters does, or even Winners and Losers did. And I mean, on that point, I remember seeing the first episode of Winners and Losers and not being convinced, and then it did really quite well. And Wild Boys as well, I think did better than I expected on seeing the first episode. People seem to have embraced the theme. But whether it has that longevity, whether people have kind of just tuned in to see it. Obviously, Daniel McPherson as a leading man, I think, is a real draw card for a lot of people. But yeah, it needs to really tighten up its script writing, and the storylines there just need to keep holding the interest. So I am a bit worried. It's on a bit of shaky ground, but still doing well for Seven. I'm sure they'd be happy enough with it.
You actually make a good point there about winners and losers. I was in exactly the same situation, not quite convinced about the series,
Mm.
but it did get better as it went along. Do you think it missed a big opportunity? This is Wild Boys by screening it at 7:30 p.m. It was promoted as being really slick and sexy and violent and
Mm.
very adult in nature, and then it was given a PG family friendly slot. I mean, did you find that weird at all?
I did. I think, they should have marketed it as a family thing from the beginning because kids really love that sort of stuff and, almost like the Western type thing. And I think they would have done themselves more favours to have always marketed it that way because, yeah, it definitely fell short of the way it was being framed in the beginning. And, every time I'm, compiling our guide and popping Wild Boys in there, I'm always doing a double take going, oh, it's on at 7:30, that's right. I do find it odd that sort of grates a bit with me. But yeah, I think it is, somewhat kid-friendly viewing the episodes I have seen, and there's a bit of violence and all of that, but it seems like a bit of fun, and definitely not in the realms of your underbelly where it just wouldn't be appropriate for kids. So yeah, I think they were a bit unsure of their vision there, and needed to sort that out, and maybe it has suffered a bit as a result of that.
Well, Australian drama to Australian reality. Let's go to the X Factor. Are you enjoying this season?
I am. Look, with things like X Factor, and it was always the way for me with Idol, I sort of, at the beginning when there's quite a few contestants, it's neither here nor there, but as it sort of tightens down, I'm actually really loving Mel B. She's one of the reasons I'm tuning in. She's pretty irreverent, says what she wants and doesn't care what anyone thinks, and I think she's a real asset to the program. In terms of actual contestants, I mean, I can't sing a note. No, disrespect for them, but I've felt like the quality of the singing on it is probably a bit down compared to last year. But there are some standouts. I mean, we've got the young lad Reese. He's from South Australia, and we own him, and he's been doing fabulously, and I think he'll go the distance. And a young girl called Christina as well. She seems to be doing quite well. But yeah, as far as the singing, I'm just glad Mel B's there. She's keeping me hooked and entertained.
Well, I think it picked up something there. In my opinion, when Australia's Got Talent was on, they had six acts that could have easily have won. They're all very strong, and even the runner-ups were still very good. But while I'm enjoying this series of the X Factor for sure, it does feel like a two-horse race. With maybe a dark horse, maybe with Andrew, which is a little disappointing. Do you see it like that, or do you see it as a more of an even field?
No, I agree with you there completely, Aaron. I mean, last year's series, I mean, Altian was like the dark horse. He kind of came out, and I've got to say, despite all his, personal problems of late and, all sorts of label dramas at the time, I was really, really going for him because you kind of watch his evolution over the series, and he eclipsed some of the favourites whose names now escape me. He's the only one you sort of remember. But yeah, this year it feels like that. I sort of flick on and make sure I do. Yeah, see Reese, Christina, Andrew, and even that Declan. He's sort of offering up something a bit different there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out, and it has, in terms of eliminations, followed the trajectory that's to be expected. Actually, there's Young Man Society as well. That group, they're quite fun as well. I don't mind them, but whether they're going to go on and win it, probably not. So
They
yeah.
they were eliminated last week.
Oh, that's right, they were.
Yeah.
See, there you go. My bad. So that's the thing. They came out as an early favourite. Guy thought that they would go the distance, and was saying to people, you need to vote for them, and thought the issue was that people weren't voting. But obviously they're just not good enough. So.
Well, one reality show to another, Beauty and the Geek. The traditional makeover special aired this week, and the second part next week. Are you enjoying the series, and what do you think of the additional male beauty and female geek?
I think it's a great twist. It needed a little bit of a makeover. I mean, it's always a competent enough series, but it's not one of those big marquee reality series. And, not that that's really brought it into the realm of some other reality series, but it is a nice little twist and just an extra dynamic. And, obviously makeover on any show, on your Top Model, on the, back when they used to do sort of extreme makeover shows and stuff like that, they're always going to, draw in a lot of interest. So really the challenge will be on the other side of the makeovers, keeping the interest.
Mm. It seems to be a strong series, but they're not really tipping the million mark on Thursday nights, obviously, except for the makeover episode that aired this week. Is it just the night that it's on being Thursday, or is the series lacking something this season?
Look, I think, yeah, Thursday's really tough. And as you sort of see with the slap there, I mean, that's trying to get to the million mark, basically, on most of its outings. And I think it is the night that it's on. I think if it was on earlier in the week, then it might have a bit more of a fighting chance. We saw that with the Amazing Race Australia. I mean, that was earlier in the week, and it did great numbers. So it really is, what Seven want to invest in terms of the programming, but they've put it on Thursdays now, so we'll have to ride out the series and see what happens.
Another show with Seven, when we're talking about Australian drama, forgot to mention Packed to the Rafters. It's still very strong for an Australian drama, 1.5 million a week at least, but certainly down on the 2 million last year. Is it the storylines, the exit of the female leads earlier in the season, a combination of that, both something else? What do you think?
Yeah, I think my first first reaction would be that it's the storylines. I mean, it's very hard that it's a show that doesn't centre around a particular event. It's it's an everyday life. It's situational drama. So to keep that going without the storylines getting too ridiculous, and we see it. We've seen it over the years with Home and Away and Neighbours, with your classic soapies. Sometimes they've got a spike with a storyline that may or may not resonate. And I think that's the problem. They probably just need to sort of knuckle down and not try and, go too far out of the box. And hopefully it'll come back on a bit more of an even keel. But definitely when anyone leaves a series, it has an impact. And it'll just be interesting to see how it goes along. Eventually other cast members will want to develop their careers outside Rafters, particularly younger cast members. So, I wouldn't like to see it drop anymore. It's obviously a very loved drama, and hopefully it can just hold strong for now.
I'm not sure if you're getting any sort of mail like I am at the moment. Quite a few angry fans, obviously, with Seven's decision to class next week's episode as the season finale when it's actually not. They did show seven or eight episodes, I think, earlier this year. Then they've come back showing 7 or 8, and they've actually left the last 7 or 8 for next year. Do you think that was a wise move by Seven? They've really chopped and changed this season.
Yeah, look, they've been pretty cruel to Rafters fans, to be honest, and I know that, earlier in the year when they broke Rafters to put on winners and losers, that was a huge gamble, and luckily for Seven it paid off, and maybe that's made them a bit complacent that they feel like they can do that again now, but, you can't jerk fans of a show around too much because they will eventually move on and find something else, so I'll be really interested to see if it does come back as strong as a result of that. It's just lucky it's coming from such a strong base that they might get away with it, but we're definitely getting that sort of feedback as well, that people are unhappy with that. People want to see a series play out, or play out at least to a cliffhanger and some conclusions, and then return again in due course.
Well, last question about the Seven Network. They've kept their fast tracking really to a minimum. The Amazing Race obviously needs to be fast tracked, and it did also make some sense to continue from season 1 to season 2 of Body of Proof. The only other shows that they're fast tracking are Parenthood and perhaps the new season of How I Met Your Mother's coming up. 9 and 10 are fast tracking everything pretty much. Now there are major positives and negatives to fast tracking American shows. What's your take on the issue?
Look, I think it's a tough one because you do in this age of illegal downloading, and this age particularly with reality TV of internet spoilers. You can jump on Wikipedia and find out the results of a lot of stuff, and social media as well. People all over the world are talking about different shows, so it really does make sense to fast track. But there are drawbacks. I mean, Channel 9 have learned the hard way with Charlie's Angels. They've fast tracked that straight across, and now it's been cancelled in the US. So they've got a situation where they've moved their schedule around, albeit they had bumped Charlie's Angels to go. But they need to just be conscious of maybe letting an audience sort of test out things in the US first. So I think there's a real case for reality TV to fast track it, but I really don't see the sense with drama. I mean, Seven with Downton Abbey, they held off fast tracking that, and obviously that was a huge success. And people are eagerly awaiting series 2. They can. Illegally download it, of course, but a lot of people are willing to just wait, watch it, on their screens at an allotted time when the network's ready to bring it. So yeah, I think it really depends on the genre of the show.
Well, let's move to 9 now. Now, I'm not sure whether you saw the article. TV Tonight wrote an article recently about the network's sort of inability to communicate well with the media in terms of its programming schedules and amendments. 9 are not sending out any amendments to well, pretty much most of the media. Has that had any effect on yourself and your work at the advertiser? And what's your take on the issue?
Oh, certainly. I mean, with any channel, as soon as something doesn't align with the TV networks and what we print in our weekly entertainment section hit, and our TV listings within that, instead of calling the network, we're getting called. And it's really tough because, we can only, keep up with what they're telling us, and a lot of last minute changes are being made and things are being shuffled around. And so I am seeing that, across the board, but 9 have been doing it more so. And it makes life really tough. I mean, sure, a lot of people have electronic program guides these days, but, you want to get out your TV guide and circle your programs and do all of that. And it's really hard when you flick on and what you expect to be there isn't there. So I can understand, the frustrations our readers and TV viewers out there are experiencing.
Let's talk about Nine's major success this year. Obviously, the block. Did you watch and did you enjoy?
I was hooked. I'll tell you what, from the beginning, I was sort of neither here nor there. Obviously, I tuned in for work purposes and went, oh, yeah, okay. And then somewhere along the way, it would always be on when I'd be home cooking, and it would just draw me. And, even the challenges, which, aren't really about advancing the main narrative, which were the houses they were renovating, even those sort of drew me in. I just think, Scott Cam, Shelley Craft, they did a great job. They were sort of a good mix. And they had a good bunch of people. They weren't particularly unlikable for couples. We actually had a bit of a division in my house. Our housemate really loved Polly and Woz, and my partner and I were going for Josh and Jenna, and everyone
Mm.
sort of went behind someone. And, so the beauty of it was once they got rid of all the extra couples and you just settled on that four, it really came into its own. And it's just such a shame it ended the way it did with the failed auctions. So.
Well, next year it looks like obviously we stripped again, probably earlier in the year in February. Do you think it will gain the same high audiences again?
Look, it'll be interesting to see if it's hurt by the result. People obviously, the houses failing to sell for what was anticipated is, a reflection of the property market, and unfortunately, I don't see that really righting itself between now and early next year. So, it is hard because it makes the whole exercise seem a bit futile in a way. What they're doing, and they're not going to possibly get those big numbers. So, I think Nine are going to need to really get behind it, get some really good people on the show, and get some decent properties. I'm hopeful that it will do well, but it will be interesting to see how it goes earlier in the year because as we know, when it's nicer weather, people are out and about. Whereas when it did screen, it was right in the heart of cold weather, at least here in Adelaide, and everyone was home early and able to watch it. So I'm a little sceptical, but hopeful for them.
Yeah. Well, over to the Big Bang Theory now. Now that's got caused a bit of division. Some say it's a great show and should always enjoy the numbers it gets. Others say it's just pathetic the way Nine schedules it. I mean, up to 17 episodes are screened a week across Go at Nine. What are your thoughts on the scheduling of Big Bang?
Well, and it's like it's the new Two and a Half Men. This is what they used to do with Two and a Half Men in Charlie Sheen's heyday. You felt like you'd switch on Nine or any of the digital channels, and it's all you could see. And for a while there as well, Seven were doing quite similar with How I Met Your Mother, or at least it felt that way to me. So with a good sitcom, it is important to pump it out there and let fans watch it. But yeah, I think there is such a thing as too much of a good thing, and they've got to really be careful because they've got a hit on their hands with Big Bang Theory. It's enjoying success. And talking anecdotally to people, there are people coming out of the woodwork now only just switching onto it going, oh, have you watched that Big Bang Theory? It's a really good show. And obviously it has been around for a while, but it was almost like, Two and a Half Men's kind of poor cousin. And now it's been able to really sort of step up. So, yeah, I think they've got to be careful with overscheduling it, definitely.
Well, talking about Two and a Half Men too, the big numbers of that first Ashton Kutcher episode. I mean, that happened in America way. It's fallen away. It's still sitting on around a million. Although I think this week's episode was about 800 and something thousand. What do you think of Two and a Half Men 2.0?
Well, look, I think a big part of the spike, not to take anything away from Ashton, was yes to see how he goes, but also, how do they farewell Charlie? There are obviously some spoilers online ahead of the episode airing, but just for people to have that closure. I mean, Charlie Sheen, for all his faults, was a very loved character on that, and it'll be interesting to see how they keep advancing the narrative. I mean, the same thing's happening in America. People, it had that massive spike. It's still getting strong audiences, but there has been a bit of a gradual drop off. I think it will be okay, but I don't think it will be sort of restored to its former glory. And as I sort of said before, it's almost like Big Bang Theory has eclipsed it in a way.
Mm. Hey, look, another show is well, I mean, I've enjoyed, but I guess it's been disappointing in the ratings. The Joy of Sets hasn't been a ratings performer, and to be honest, I think we're lucky that Nine has screened 5 of the 8 episodes. I mean, I love Tony Martin, Ed Cavalier, and it's a shame it's not working. What are your thoughts on the show?
Yeah, and when I first tuned in, I tuned in for the first episode, and I was pleasantly surprised, to be honest. There have been shows that have been tried to be done before that, commented on TV and that sort of thing. I mean, there was the short-lived, the White Room that, didn't take off, and, I was thinking we were going to have a repeat of that on our hands. But on watching it, the first episode, their nerves were apparent, but over time that has, calmed down, and it's, just as good a show as, your sort of Hamish and Andy's Gap Year and that sort of thing in terms of that, couple of laughs here and there, and, a couple of, maybe slightly more dull spots, but, it's entertaining enough. But yeah, whether it's entertaining enough to stick around and be renewed, well, that's the question. But it is pleasing to see Nine persevere with it, because they obviously, have a history of slashing things quite quickly.
Well, finally, for Nine, it'd be hard not to mention Celebrity Apprentice, which is coming up. I mean, are you looking forward to it? And what do you think of the show being sort of stripped 5 nights a week?
Yeah, look, it's a good idea. I think the stripped. I mean, I think Nine needs something to anchor them down in the week, sort of the weeknights, like the Block did. But whether it's going to get the audience, I don't know. I'm excited to see. I was always a fan of the original Apprentice, the Donald Trump version. Then when he moved to celebrity versions, it was kind of here nor there for me. So, it'll be interesting to see a lot. They've done well to curate the personalities they have, but they've just got to be careful that these personalities don't grate. I mean, I think Pauline Hanson and Warwick Capper, they're going to make great TV, but whether they're going to want to make you tune in every night of the week, well, that kind of remains to be seen. So I do have the disc of the first episode in my hot little hand. I just haven't had a chance to watch it yet. That will be my weekend viewing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it has to offer.
All right, well, let's go to Network 10 now. Well, I guess they're a mixed bag. They're picking up a little bit since the end of the Renovators, with success with the fast tracking of some of their shows, and the dumping of the late news that's given them some valuable late night shares. Where do we start? I guess the Renovators is wrapped. I guess the question is, what went wrong?
Yeah, look, I've been saying for some time that, even though the Block was successful, that wasn't necessarily successful because people tuned in to learn how to renovate. I think it was the right mix of personalities and that kind of dynamic between the contestants that had people coming back. And, for me, the way I've sort of anecdotally explained it is that everybody cooks. They have to cook, or they have to eat at very least. That's why MasterChef was great. Now, everybody might have a home, but quite a few people aren't interested in renovating it, or learning how to better their home or that sort of thing, and that's what a lot of reality TV is. It's what we take from it, and I think Renovators just sort of failed to have something to offer in that vein, and also it just seemed to go on and on and on, and they started with a very large contestant base. I think it was confusing for viewers, and obviously coming off the back of the Block was not good for it. I think they were expecting, once the Block wrapped, for their figures to spike, but they barely reached the million mark throughout series. I think they only managed it 3 or 4 times, including the finale. So it's real disappointment, and it's interesting to note that 10 is still standing by it for next year.
Well, I was just going to say, well, let's have a little bit of a side bet. 10 says it will be back next year. Do you think it actually will be back next year?
Well, I guess they don't want to have egg on their faces. It was their big marquee reality offering. It was going to be the next MasterChef, and I think that was their first failing. Calling it the MasterChef of renovations, and that sort of thing. If it does come back, it's going to have to take some tweaks to the format, and that's what they've been saying they offer. To be honest, Aaron, I don't know what they can do with it. Whether they, tighten up the contestant base, less contestants, and possibly, I'm not saying they were unlikable, but there was a real weird dynamic going on in the beginning with the contestants, and a lot of infighting that you would think would make for good TV, but it just made you want to switch off.
With Channel 10 at the moment, it's just been a big major decision that's been made. Basically, within the 24 hours of this podcast, in the last 24 hours, has been the dumping of George Negus. And the 7 p.m. project will be named The Project and will air for 1 hour at 6:30. What do you think about all this?
Look, it's it's great to see the project as it now is do that. I mean, it's such a success story for the network. I recall when 7 p.m. Project first debuted, it was struggling with numbers. There was calls to axe it, and everybody thought that it would be done and dusted in a matter of weeks or months. And as we've seen over the years, I think it's years it's been on now. It's gone from strength to strength, and cracked the million here and there, and it just continues to be a strong performer. And I just think it definitely suits that time of the night better for people who might have tuned in for the early news. They don't need the Negus analysis, and that's no disrespect to the man himself. He's obviously a very talented broadcaster and journalist, and it's good to see he is staying on with the network and will still have a presence. But yeah, just towards the end of Negus, I was seeing some of the stories that they were covering, and it just seemed to have lost its way a little bit. And perhaps it would have been better as a weekly show, and digging into the issues of the week rather than, trying really hard to get content up every day. But hey, that's ancient history. It's now moved on, and I think the project will do really well. Often watching that, sometimes things feel a bit rushed, so it will be good for them to have the extra time, and I hope they grab it with both hands.
Let's talk about a couple of American shows with Channel 10. First of all, Glee. I guess it's one of the most mucked around programs that can still attract an okay audience. 10 knew that when they fast tracked it, they would only get 3 episodes out because of a scheduled break in America for baseball. Now the show is back in a 7:30 slot next week. Sorry, from November 2nd, Wednesday, November 2nd at 7:30. I guess the question is, why do you think 10 fast tracked it at 8:30 for 3 weeks, and rather than wait until the baseball was over and then just started at 7:30 and run it uninterrupted?
Mm. Look, it's an interesting sort of proposition that they find themselves, or interesting position they find themselves in, because, they need to recover from a very lackluster ratings year. Renovators brought them down, so they're wanting to rush content to screens that they know are going to get eyeballs on screen. And fans of Glee, like the fans of Rafters, are used to being mucked around now, and with Glee, it's a very loyal audience, and I think 10 are a bit content and a bit complacent in the knowledge that if they pop it on, the audience will come, and then the audience will patiently wait. For someone who's not a big fan, it is hard to stay tuned in. It's a show that I love to watch when I can, but if, I feel like I never really know when it's on. But they will probably do good numbers, and fans will keep coming back, so they're lucky in that respect.
Um, on Sunday nights, after Terra Nova, there's a show called The Ringer. Sorry, I thought it was just okay, but its scheduling was a bit eyebrow raising for me. I mean, it would attract a good 14 to 25 crowd, but at
Mm.
9:30 Sunday, that's really asking a lot. I would think it seems more suited to 11 to 8:30. Did you watch the first episode and?
Look, I tuned in a little bit. For me, the big thing is, it feels like this show's come along and out of nowhere. There was, very little pre-promotion. It's got Sarah Michelle Gellar in it, who obviously, is still a big name to this day for Buffy and has a huge fan base. And I just think, 10's, treatment of that and the way they've marketed it is what's hurt it. It's quite a good show from what I saw, and, and it could be quite competent, but yeah, they just need to put it out there more, and I feel like maybe they've missed their opportunity. And I've had a couple of people say to me, well, what's this Ringer show, Like it's come out of nowhere, and people don't really understand the premise and the players in it. So, yeah, I'd like to see it marketed a bit better, and hopefully it can gain from there.
All right, and last one for 10, House. Now, it's being fast-tracked to the death sentence on Friday nights on
Mm.
10. You have to ask, I mean, what happened to this show? Seriously, the Americans still love it. We have seemed to have banned it ages ago. Why do you think that is?
I have a strong belief, and I know personally, they abandoned it when, they tried to sort of bring in a new batch of diagnostic interns and put sort of Chase and the others to the side. And, there's a long history in TV land that, when you try and replace principal cast, it can really have a very, catastrophic effect. And I think in a way that just kind of confused people, because then they brought them back in a bit more. They were never really out of the frame, your Jesse Spencers and Jennifer Morrison. But, they sort of were a side narrative and then came back, but then some of the new interns had been retained. And, and also House as a character has been getting darker and darker and darker. And what had always been quite appealing about him is, his wit, and he was a bit cheeky, but he was also a bit grumpy. But he's actually turning into a pretty unlikable person, and I think it's hard to keep tuning in and seeing that.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, Friday nights at 8:30 for that one, for anyone that's still tuning in to that show. Before you go, let's just talk about you for a moment. You're obviously the entertainment editor at the Advertiser. What is your day-to-day job at the Advertiser?
hmm Well, basically, I oversee the Lift Out, our Thursday Lift Out hit, which is a combination of TV, arts, movies, and music. So that's a weekly sort of cycle. Daily, I'm chasing entertainment news stories, keeping an eye on ratings, and also having to review TV content for our hit Lift Out. And then there's also, I oversee the gossip section here, our Adelaide Confidential section, and have a team of arts reporters under me as well. So there's always something happening and always something going on every day, which keeps us nice and busy.
Well, the Advertiser's a great read. I mean, I not in Adelaide, so I read a lot of it online. But what shows or stories have you been following lately?
Well, look, we've had big news here this week. We've had our weekend news presenter on Nine, and one of our weeknight anchors dropped by Nine here, who are actually owned by Win Corporation, and that's been really big news here in Adelaide this week, and that's what we're following. We're looking at getting to the bottom of it. It seems to be a casualty of network restructures and costings and coming from the actual Nine network over in the eastern states. So that's been a real big thing here. I'm also keeping a real eye on the summer TV period because, Seven have been so dominant in the TV ratings this year that it's, got to a point where it's almost a bit boring when someone always wins. So, the networks seem to be looking to summer to try and see if they can make that a bit of a battleground. And summer TV over the years, particularly with the advent of multi-channels, has become less of the rubbish that they used to just put on there and a bit more quality and a bit more diversity.
Yeah, that summer TV will be something interesting this year because all of the last year we didn't have all of the channels here, but 11 will be this will be their first summer, and one without it being a predominantly sport channel, so it will be interesting. Look, I know you'll have to follow some shows, being in the position you're in, but what are your personal faves in terms of shows on the box?
Definitely. Well, the slap, as we spoke about earlier, is the big one, and I'd been tuning in to Underbelly Razor. I'd really been enjoying that quite a bit. In terms of sort of things on pay TV, True Blood, Nurse Jackie, those sort of shows are great. When I can catch up with them, and yeah, and I've just been sort of keeping my eye out. It's hard to, you don't want to have too many favourites because you've got to watch so much for work anyway. But definitely be getting into the drama, and I can't wait for Offspring to come back on 10 next year. That's a real firm favourite of mine.
And what's coming up for you for the rest of the year? I mean, I know you'll be following the X Factor for the rest of the year. A lot of stories will just come up as they come up, but some things you can sort of see for the rest of the year. The X Factor, I suppose, maybe Junior MasterChef. What else can we expect this year?
Yeah, well, we're getting to the point in the year where it's also interesting to look back a bit retrospectively and, look at what worked and what didn't. Obviously, as the year's gone on, we've, seen what's flopped and what's flourished. But, to do those end-of-year ratings analysis and just find out what people are watching and what it's kind of saying about our trends in TV viewing is really interesting. So that's something we'll be looking at in the coming months. And obviously, news restructures. I don't think we've seen the end of it. Obviously, here in Adelaide, we're having, troubles with Nine News, and they're changing things around, and 10 seem to be constantly changing. So, I dare say before the year's out, there'll be some more developments on that front.
And just finally, this is obviously a national podcast, so not everyone's in South Australia. But I mean, for people that are in South Australia, if you pick up the Advertiser each day, what features do you have? I mean, you did talk about the lift out, and also I suppose what can readers expect online?
Definitely. Well, we've got lift outs every day in the Advertiser. Starting at the beginning of the week, we've got a new one that was launched a couple of months ago called My Week, and that's really aimed at skews more female and grocery buyer, and it's quite interesting. It's got recipes and different articles and columnists, and that's quite a good read. And then on Tuesday we've got Business Journal, it's a business day for the paper, and then Wednesday we've got the National Taste lift out, so that's food, and then Thursday is the entertainment lift out that we spoke about, HIT, which also integrates the arts, so film, music, TV, and it's got our TV listings. And then on Friday it's about sport, and our Saturday paper has the usual classifieds, your Korea One, your Cars Guide, and also the real estate lift out and our SA Weekend magazine. So there's something in every day, and then that's not to mention the daily stories that we're breaking in the paper and our gossip section. So there's something to offer for everyone really, and for those people who aren't in the state, all they have to do is head to Adelaide Now, that's www.adelaidenow.com.au, to find all of that content and more online, lots of videos, galleries. We're really ramping up our offerings in that sense, and we've also got an iPad app, so there's lots to consume here in Adelaide.
Well, I might have to look at the iPad app. I'm in one of those people that's had one of those old phones like for the last 10 years, and it's finally broken. So I'm actually going shopping today to get the old iPad or iPhone. I'm not really sure yet, so I'll have to get the
Good
app for
luck.
that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you can get one of those iPhone 4S's or whatever it is. So yeah,
Well, yeah.
fantastic.
I look forward to following you with your work on the advertiser. I think we try to cover a lot of programs today, so thanks very much for joining me at TV Central.
Thanks for your time, Aaron. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
No worries. Jessica Leo, Entertainment Editor with The Advertiser there. That concludes another TV Central podcast. Next podcast will be a very special 50th edition. Until then, I'm Aaron Ryan for tvcentral.com.au. See you then.